I'd like to introduce Steffen, our dear colleague and friend, of course, who is one of the leaders of the B Corp movement in the Nordics and who is going to guide us through the first session, the movement of improvement. Steffen, over to you.
Thank you. And hi, everyone. I'm Steffen. Sorry, I don't have the background, but apparently Zoom thinks, I'm from the Nordics. So I'm fading into the background, thinks I'm just as white as my wall behind me. So I just don't have any B Corp logo on me today. I hope you don't mind, because today is going to be very great. The first session, I'm very honored. We're going to talk about the movement of improvement. I'm joined by Judith from African Clean Energy, and we are going to have a conversation on how can you as a company actually use the B Lab tools on improving your impact as a company. But just before we dive into the specific conversation, then I have a question for you. Yesterday, I was told that you had a great experience with using Mentimeter. So Helena is going to share a link with you in the chat. And there, I would like you to answer the question, are you using any of the following tools to improve your impact for your company? And of course, we are asking you about the B Lab tools. So either the B Impact Assessment and the knowledge base, maybe even you're using both the B Impact Assessment and the SDG Action Manager. Are you only using the SDG Action Manager? Are you using other tools, or don't you, at the moment, use tools to measure your impact? So just give you a few seconds to answer that question. Cool. Very exciting. It looks like the majority of you guys are using at least the B Impact Assessment. Some of you are also using the SDG Action Manager and also the knowledge base. So I think we have some experts in the room at least. But yes, I know at least I have one expert with me today, and that is Judith Joan Walker. She is the COO of African Clean Energy. And just before giving the mic to Judith, I'm going to say that African Clean Energy is the highest scoring B Corp in Europe at the moment. They started out when they become B Corp for the first time with a wobbling 148.9 points, and now they are scoring 179.8. I think that's totally crazy. Judith, can you please take it away and tell us what kind of company can score 179.8 points?
Well, I'll start by saying a very proud company, because I have to say it's one of my great sources of pride this year was when we started doing our recertification, and I realized that we were improving our score, which I'm told is quite a rare thing to do, especially after 3 years and a lot of growth since our first B Impact Assessment. So I'm incredibly proud of that. Some of you may remember that in the New Year's Borrel, I actually set the challenge for myself, and I was sort of joking, but then did it. So very, very pleased. Thank you so much. And yeah, what kind of company? Well, the thing is, I think one of the reasons that we actually went for the B Corp certification in the first place was that it aligns so well with everything that we believe in, that business is a force for good, that you don't have to be a charity to have impact. You can do business and good and have an impact and keep all of those things in line, that you can be mission driven and still have commercial success. These are all the things that we sort of started off with. We are a family business. Like, we were founded by my brother and my father. I joined when we launched our own products and when we started directly selling to customers, as opposed to, we started in manufacturing. So I think our sort of moral code and ethics has really driven us from the very beginning, because we actually started with a bit of a problem statement. African Clean Energy makes primarily a cooking solution. So we make the ACE1. And what happened was that we saw with our own eyes that the lack of energy access was causing really devastating problems in the country that my parents were living in, Lesotho, which is where we saw this problem sort of firsthand. And I grew up all over the world and had kind of seen elements of these issues before. But the fact is, more than 4 million people a year die from household air pollution. So that's cooking on things like charcoal and open fire. It's a very little known problem, and it's really devastating to know that the technologies exist to solve this. It's just difficult to reach the people that we're looking to serve, and that requires investment and data, and there just aren't that many organizations working on a problem like this. And aside from that, we realized that there was this sort of silo between electricity and thermal energy, because cooking is thermal energy. And think, we don't use the same tools to cook on that we use to charge our mobile phone either. Now, even in Amsterdam, we don't cook on electricity, but the investment into electricity has been sort of outweighing investment into clean cooking. We saw all of these issues, and we decided to do something about it. We decided to roll out the ACE1, which is a hybrid biomass burning and solar electricity product that we sell direct to customer in markets where that's really needed, which is currently Lesotho, Uganda, Kenya, and Cambodia. And by manufacturing our own products, distributing our own products, pre-financing our own products, we're doing this all with in-house sales teams. We have a lot of control over our value chain, a lot of control over how our business operates, how we approach our end users, how our employees are treated. And I think that's where, going through the entire B Impact assessment, it was really interesting to be able to look at every level of the company, and, the majority of the supply chain being within our control means that, yeah, you can improve on every element. So yes, we have external parties that we work with, and yes, we do a supplier code of ethics, and we do questionnaires, and we make sure we follow up with everybody that's outside of our direct value chain. But at the same time, so much of it is within our influence. We can do business the way we think business should be done, right? We can make decisions not just based on the commercial impact, but also the social impact, the environmental impact. And I think that's where, maybe we have an advantage, is we have so much influence. And of course, that makes the business all the more challenging, because there's it's really vertically integrated. So if everything from components all the way to after sales care is what we do, including loan management and maintenance and all sorts of different things. So the challenge is, how do we look at every one of those elements with the same lens, which is doing business the way we think business should be done. And I laugh because I remember I joined in 2014, and I joined my brother. My brother and I run the company together. And we were trying to figure out, how do we make decisions, and how do we choose, what is our ethics, and how do we choose how we do things? And we're pretty well aligned because we were raised the same way, and we were raised very internationally. So I think that, makes us very open-minded people, and we sort of understand the context relatively well. And I was like, how do you decide yes or no on certain tough questions? And he said, the way that we decide is, imagine that a reporter throws a microphone in your face and asks you a really tough question. I want us always to be able to tell the full truth and be proud of it and be able to justify it. And that is how we make decisions. So if there's anything where you're embarrassed that you're doing in a certain way, or you think, ooh, I don't know if we should, don't do it that way. Do it a way that you're proud of doing it. So that if anyone asks you, you would proudly defend the absolute truth of what you're doing and how you're doing it. So we always keep that in mind with our decisions. And I guess that's how you become the highest scoring B Corp in Europe.
Yeah. So just out of curiosity, when you went through the B Impact assessment, you said that you want to be able to answer honestly and align with your values whenever someone asks you critical questions. Was there any point in the B Impact assessment where you thought, oh my God, we have never thought about this could be something that we should implement into our company?
Ooh, that is such a good question. I think realistically, the first time when we went through it, I mean, that being now, over 3 years, maybe 4 years ago, the size of the company that we were and the level of formalization that we had, there was plenty of things where I was like, oh, we should probably write that down. What is our policy on really oddly specific things? And it sort of brings me back to you don't know what you don't know, right? So especially as a very young entrepreneur, there's a lot of things that I have no idea is sort of like every business has one of those templates or something. And you're like, oh, okay, hold on. Let me make sure I'm trying to think of something concrete, but even just like what is formalizing just things like procurement policies and stuff is laborious. I mean, like the document we have now is probably 68 pages long or something ridiculous like that. And it's funny because especially if you're a scrappy startup, you're like, we don't want no bureaucratic documents and and then you get to the point where you're like, but we do want to make decisions in the very best way and in line with our ethics and our code of blah, 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 blah. So you start to formalize those documents. Definitely going through the impact assessment in the first place, my strongest point was like, yeah, that aligns with us, but we haven't like implemented it in that way, or we don't have the documentation or the evidence to support that. How do we integrate these things into our operations in a way that, you know, we can track our progress on these things without it being laborious, without it being super bureaucratic? I don't want to burden people with like daily reporting tasks if I can measure or integrate these things into the system in a smarter way. We're super data driven. I mean, like we collect data in field and then all the way through in productivity. I can tell you, you know, how many calls does it take a particular call center agent to incentivize a customer to make a repayment on average. I can tell you, you know, how many demos did that sales agent do before they were able to convert how many customers. I can tell you the repayment rates by region, by district, by gender. Like these are all things that we want to know and understand because it makes us stronger and better as a business. But in that integration is things like, oh, of course we should segregate our data by gender. Of course we should look at, you know, these certain statistics. And part of that is because other people are interested. And part of it is that it drives better decision making in our company in line with, you know, our code of ethics and our mission and our vision. So I don't think there was anything that I was like, oh goodness, we should really have thought of that. But definitely stuff that just like wasn't implemented yet or formalized or tracked. And I think because I did it the first time round and was like, we could do that. This my kind of attitude towards stuff like, whatever, I can do that. The second time round, we scored, you know, something like 30 additional points because the first time around I was like, we'll just implement that and then next time we'll have it, right? And that's I think what I sort of enjoyed about doing it is it allowed me sort of to raise the bar internally, because it can also be difficult to implement things for no reason. Like if someone's like, hey, can you just go ahead and implement everything you would ever need in a business ever to be able to be really effective and great and report on everything ever? Where do you start? So having like a framework for being like, oh, okay, how do we deal with customers? Okay, how do we deal with governance? Okay, how do we do, and like having these little boxes for you to work in allows you to think outside of those boxes too, and like bigger picture, but it gives you a framework to work from. And I know me being slightly like bing, 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 maybe like just a hint of ADHD, it really helps me that there is a structure I can rely on, because in general as COO, I have to define the structure of everything. So it's good when there's like a tool that helps me sort of, you know, subdivide those things.
So using the B impact assessment, how do you then prioritize? Because I think one of the things is that a lot of companies recognize when going through the B impact assessment is there is so much that you actually can do. You know, you can score tons of points, up to 200. So you're close by at the moment. But how do you prioritize what to do when working with your impact?
Well, in general, in our company, we always prioritize the end user. It's been a real challenge because our customers tend to be quite poor, right? I mean, we're dealing with $2 a day customers and anywhere to, you know, maybe $5 a day, but still, like in general, we're dealing with very poor customers. It's always difficult to keep them central to the whole picture because you're trying to get investment and potentially there's external revenue streams that we're looking at. And how do we keep the customer central? I think, I mean, you can see in our points how many we have. We have 61.5 points for our customer section at the moment. So I think it shows in our score as well that that's a really, really high priority in how we target people, how we support them, how do we make things affordable, how do we provide the best service, how do we treat everybody equally? Like this is a huge priority for us regardless. So I think probably that's always number one anyway, but you know, you don't make any of those things happen without your employees. So that's probably the second one. The vast majority of our employees, I mean, like 95% are in the developing countries that we operate in. So like, again, like it's sort of a bit of a knock-on effect from aligning everything to your mission. How do you prioritize it? I mean, there are things that you do because it aligns the best with your vision and your mission, and there are things that you can do to ensure that you keep your company afloat and that it all commercially aligns. Actually, one of the things that we're doing at the moment, which I'm really proud of, is we're trying to transition aligning all of our key metrics towards CO2 offset. And the funny thing is, it's actually that keeps our customers central, because we're aligning our systems to measure actual CO2 offsets from our products that we have distributed, meaning we don't measure it as an offset until we can measure the actual usage of the product. So we get usage logs from the product that we can measure as CO2 offset based on the baseline of the customer. And because we then plan to look at things like carbon revenue from those offsets, the customer has to use the product for us to get additional revenue streams, meaning we have to keep them happy. We have customer acquisition, customer retention, maintenance, all of those things have to work for us to be able to get that usage information. And that was our way of taking external revenue streams, but keeping the customer central, because like, as I say, that's how we have to prioritize stuff. And by doing things in that way, you align everybody, including governance and investors, et cetera, because we're aligning everyone to a singular goal by choosing a metric that is affected by all activities of the country. Because all activities of the company. Because if you look at, you know, your supply chain affects your potential CO2 offset, your maintenance service does, your call center does, your sales agents definitely do, the fuel distributor does, all of those things all align. And our like mission is to try and get everybody facing the same way and be mission aligned. And we do that by looking at all the different categories and how they're influenced by this single metric. And I think once we get to that point, it'll be revolutionary.
Yeah, I think it already is. I just have one single question because time is running. We don't have that much time. We had some questions from our chat. I think I'm going to try to combine the two. So first question is, how do you actually reach your customers in these low impact or income areas? And then number two is, how do you then also track and, you know, the positive outcome and impact? I think you've already mentioned a bit about the outcome and impact tracking, but how do you reach them, and how do you actually define what kind of outcomes that you are looking for?
Yeah, so we have in-house sales teams. We have really strong presence in the markets that we operate in. For example, our newest branch is in Changwali refugee settlement in Western Uganda. What we did is we hired local communities. So we actually have 2 refugee sales agents and 2 host community nationals working together to reach the local community within the refugee settlement. So we really want to build a very strong presence there. So we built a shop in the settlement as well. We hired people from the local settlement as well. Like, it's super important that you're very close to the user. Now, the way that we track all of those things is every single one of them is trained in data collection through a mobile app. The mobile app goes directly into our cloud-based CRM, and all of our loan management, data analysis, productivity tracking, like everything is built into Salesforce. Everything's built into Salesforce. And in that way, we can keep a really close eye on everything that's happening. And at the same time, like, really empower those local communities, because they need our training and a smartphone, and then they're able to achieve really great things. And the great thing about actually this project in particular is they're doing so well so quickly that in commissions, they all like tripled or quadrupled their salaries 3 months running in their first 3 months. And it's just super exciting. that when you establish something new and you can monitor and track the results really well, it also means that you can really reward and incentivize your employees, but also the end user, because we've now rolled out Ace Connect, which is a customer-facing app. And through that, they can do digital referrals for their family members and friends. And because we can track those referrals and the success of them, we actually are rewarding those end users by taking 1 monthly payment off for every successful referral, which means people are having their loans and their investment into renewable energy by convincing other people to adopt renewable energy. So this is where this digital technology and you're being data-driven but customer-centric means that you can keep incentivizing and rewarding people for making better decisions, like transitioning away from charcoal, which is horrific, towards local, sustainably produced biomass fuels that offset carbon, improve livelihoods, improve health impacts, improve the deforestation rates. Like everything is sort of like win, 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 win. We're using the digital technology that, like, you know, we use in the Netherlands to order groceries or a chauffeur. We're using those to incentivize a transition towards sustainable energy.
I think we could have a discussion about this the entire day. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time for this conversation. I also brought in 3 different other case studies so people can get inspired by it. Thank you so much, Judith. That was truly amazing. African Clean Energy, check them out. They are, and you guys also know it, and I think you should be rewarded for it. Thank you so much. 197.8 points. Amazing.
8. Thank you so much.
Yes.
It was 197 next year. Thanks.
I also brought some case studies for you guys, so you can also get inspired by some of other companies are doing, because not all companies are African Clean Energy. We also have other companies in the B Corp movement that are using the B impact assessment in a structured way, with all of its difficulties and frustrations aligned with it. One of them is the Copenhagen-based Organic Basics. And they're actually using the B impact assessment as a sub KPI for their social and environmental performance in their board of directors. So actually they are yearly reporting on how is it going with the B impact assessment, and then how are we actually implementing, and how far away are we from reaching our goals of continuous improvements year through year, going for their recertification next year. And it can, of course, be very hard to define what should we then prioritize. So how they've done it is that they've picked up, and Helena, you can change the slide. They've made this prioritization matrix, and then they've defined the questions in the B impact assessment. Some of them scores a lot of points and are pretty much straightforward, doesn't necessarily take that much effort. It could be just formalizing a practice that you already have. I know, for example, that one of the first thing Organic Basics did as a quick win, that was actually writing a employee handbook and putting all of their different, for example, the virtual stewardship policies in there. That's going to be, that gave them a lot of points almost straight away. Then there's the big bets. It's the initiatives or the questions in the B impact assessment that gives you tons of points, but also require a lot of work, and also are quite difficult actually to implement. I can then say that what Organic Basics they did, they went into the community and looked at, you could actually then make your own foundation. So that's actually what they've done. They've implemented the Organic Basics Fund, and what they're doing now is that they're actually funding projects, for example, in Turkey, where they're working together with WWF in investing in regenerative cotton agriculture. So actually also investing in initiatives that could then potentially impact your own company in a positive way. Then there are the maybes. Could be, for example, looking at stuff that could make sense for a company and give some amount of points and doesn't take that much effort. Last but not least, then of course there are some questions in the B impact assessment that are not relevant for the specific company, takes a lot of effort, and then that's something that we would say not this time. Yes. Then we have, and look, now you can change the slide, Helena. Thank you. So we have ImpacTrip, and what they've been doing is actually also quite amazing. So a lot of companies, when they're filling out the B impact assessment for the first time, then they're not necessarily eligible for the plus 80 points. Can be quite frustrating because there are so many questions. If you've been through a B impact assessment, you'll know there's between 200 and 300 different questions. And if you don't then reach the 80-point threshold, then that's a waste of time. No, it's not. Because the B impact assessment is not only a measurement tool for your impact, but also a management tool. So what you can do is that when you then had your benchmark, you filled out the entire B impact assessment, you could then look at what you're actually able to score in the B impact assessment, and also compare your score to other companies, and then start improving by, for example, using our learning resources in the specific question or the knowledge base. So for example, what they did is that they started writing down all of their policies, and then working towards continuous improvement. And now they are certified and have a score of 86.6 points, which is really great. Next slide, please. Alma Natura. I had Spanish in high school. I don't know if that still works. Alma Natura, a Spanish company.
You did well, Steffen.
Thank you. And it's a Spanish company working in the fields of social, environmental, cultural, and educational fields, and then creating a new way of doing business. And I think this is going to ring a bell, that is more sustainable, ethical, and transparent. And I think what they're facing in one of their great challenges with their B impact assessment is, I think, a challenge that all companies face when they're starting to document what are they actually doing. One thing is, of course, thinking that you do good. Another whole other thing is that you can actually prove it. And that's what a third party here, B Lab Standards Trust, is doing. And I think Alma Natura is doing pretty well with a score over 150 points. So well done. The session is almost over. I am going to round off today with a Mentimeter question for you guys. So if we look at your company, so if you take a look at your own company, what topic of the B impact assessment would make the biggest difference in improving your impact? Just a few seconds then to log in and then put in your answer. So a heavy load on environment. I guess people weren't satisfied with COP26 then. I also saw the Mentimeter questions from from yesterday saying blah, blah, blah. Cool. Also customers and workers. Everything's important, right? Cool. I'm going to round off for today. It's been truly amazing having this conversation with you guys. Thank you so much, Judith Joan Walker, COO from African Clean Energy. It's been amazing.